My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I will never forget the moment my mother-in-law looked at my military dress uniform and started laughing. I was standing in the entrance of the Riverside Country Club ballroom, wearing my Navy service dress blues with 3 rows of ribbons I had earned over 8 years of service. My husband Daniel was supposed to be right beside me, but he had mysteriously disappeared to take a phone call. Margaret, my mother-in-law, stood just 6 feet away, surrounded by her garden club friends. She pointed directly at me, loud enough for half the room to hear, and said, "Look, everyone. Sarah's playing dress up again." Couldn't even bother to wear something appropriate to her own anniversary party. Her friends giggled. One of them whispered something about stolen valor. Another asked if I bought the uniform online. I quietly reached for my phone and sent a single text message I had prepared days earlier. Just 3 words: "It's happening. Come now." Margaret didn't apologize. She didn't pull me aside or lower her voice. Instead, she walked closer, adjusted the microphone at the gift table, and announced to the 80 guests gathered for what I believed was my 5th wedding anniversary celebration that I was disrespecting the real heroes by wearing a costume. My chest tightened, but I stood perfectly still and waited. She had no idea that 11 people were already in the parking lot, and that everything she said in the next 4 minutes would change her reputation in this town forever. What happened after those 12 veterans entered the hall became the story that ended my marriage but saved my self-respect. 10 months earlier, Daniel had been offered a promotion to regional manager at his father's real estate company. The job required us to move back to his hometown, where Margaret had spent 30 years building her social standing as the president of every charity board and country club committee. I was finishing my active duty contract and transitioning to the reserves, which gave me flexibility to move. It sounded like a fresh start, and I trusted Daniel when he said his family was proud of my service. Slowly, though, things changed. Every time I mentioned the Navy at family dinners, Margaret steered the conversation elsewhere. When I wore a Veterans Association t-shirt to a casual barbecue, she asked if I had anything more elegant. When Daniel's father introduced me at a fundraiser, he mentioned my job as a logistics coordinator, but never once said the word veteran. Then I overheard Margaret on the phone with her sister, saying she was embarrassed that her son had married some girl who couldn't even finish college the normal way and had to join the military instead. When I confronted Daniel, he apologized but asked me not to make waves. He said his mother came from a generation that didn't understand women in the military, and that pushing back would only make things harder for both of us. So I stayed quiet. 3 weeks before the party, Margaret called to tell me she was planning a surprise celebration for our 5th anniversary. She insisted I wear the designer dress she had already purchased for me. When I told her I wanted to wear my uniform to honor the military couples who couldn't attend because they were still deployed, she laughed and said, "Sweetheart, nobody wants to see that." I contacted my former commanding officer, Lieutenant Commander Briggs, and told her everything. She made a phone call to the local Veterans Network, and within 48 hours, I had a list of 12 people who had quietly agreed to attend if I needed them. The day of the party, I arrived in full dress uniform. Daniel saw me. His face went pale, and suddenly he had an urgent call to take outside. That was when I knew he had helped plan whatever humiliation his mother had prepared. Margaret grabbed the microphone meant for toasts and decided to make her announcement about my costume early. Just as she finished telling the room that real veterans would never act the way I did, the double doors at the back of the hall opened. Lieutenant Commander Briggs entered first, wearing her service dress uniform with a chest full of ribbons. Behind her came 11 other veterans: Marines, Army, Air Force, 2 Navy SEALs, a retired colonel, a Purple Heart recipient, a woman who had served 3 tours in Iraq. They walked slowly down the center aisle in a single-file line and stopped directly in front of Margaret. The entire room went silent. Briggs looked at Margaret, then at me, and said calmly, "We heard someone here was disrespecting a veteran. We came to set the record straight." One by one, each veteran stepped forward and saluted me. Margaret's face drained of all color. Her friends looked at the floor. Daniel finally reappeared in the doorway, but didn't move. The retired colonel turned to the microphone and explained to the stunned crowd exactly what each ribbon on my uniform meant. The Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal, the Global War on Terrorism Service Medal, the deployment I spent coordinating supply chains that kept field hospitals running. Then Briggs handed me a framed certificate I hadn't expected, a commendation letter signed by our former base commander, praising my service. She looked directly at Margaret and said, "This woman earned every single ribbon she's wearing. Maybe next time, ask before you assume." Margaret tried to apologize later, claiming she didn't know, but her sister's voice recording from months earlier proved otherwise. Daniel admitted he knew his mother planned to embarrass me and had hoped I wouldn't make a scene. I filed for divorce 6 weeks later. Margaret lost her position on 3 charity boards after the story spread. Daniel still works for his father, but I heard their company lost several contracts when word got out